So I saw another one of these questions. I think Dees put it out there. Tom Dees put the question out there: who is your biggest hero, or the person you most admire, and why? And he went with his dad, which for me, I'm gonna have to follow suit and also say my dad. Now, I mean, that's a challenging one, you know, your biggest hero. Well, God, who, if it's not your dad, your dad was around when you were growing up. Hopefully he was. My parents were separated, but my dad was around enough, and I actually rejoined my dad and his second family when I was about 12. And I just remember my dad, it was just in the nick of time, I would say, because I had been living with my mom, and I was probably getting a little squirrely, testing her patience and her boundaries. And so the best thing that could have happened was probably when I went back and lived with my dad and my stepmom and my little brother and sister. And the reason that I admire my dad so much is he didn't put up with any of my crap. Plain and simple. He did not. You know, I was a teenager, and I was a teenage boy, for crying out loud, and I'd been kind of allowed to run wild a little bit, I suppose, and I could get things over on my mom and get away with things that my dad just was not having. So basically, I suppose the biggest thing is the fact that he set boundaries for me, and he stuck by it. When I didn't follow his rules or didn't do things the way he wanted them done, I knew about it. And so I really admire that about my dad. He was no pushover. He didn't let me get away with anything, and that really helped to shape me into the man that I am today. Oh, wonder how many times I'll use that phrase. All right, well, the second reason that I admire my dad was my dad was a hard worker. He was all his life he was an outside sales rep. He worked for different industries, for different companies. We moved around a little bit, but my dad went to work every day, and he worked hard. And he didn't always make it to my football game or my basketball, game or open house at school, because my dad was working. He was taking care of his family. And so I suppose what I learned from a very young age was you got to go to work. I mean, we're not independently wealthy here. I wasn't a trust fund baby, and my dad made that clear too. He took care of the basics, food, shelter, clothing, some Christmas presents and some birthday presents. But if I wanted any kind of extra toys or things like that, I was gonna have to earn it, and I too would have to go to work, which is what I did. I was about 11 years old. I think I had my first job working as a caddy at a golf course, and then after that I worked at a shooting range where I was the kid who loaded clay targets I sat down in a trap in this concrete box and loaded clay pigeons on the apparatus that shot the little pigeons out, shot the clays out. So my dad, he didn't take my crap. He set a very good example by going to work every day, which modeled for me what I was going to need to do to be successful in life. And I have found that has been a huge help to me. I don't miss a lot of work. If I'm sick, I have to be really sick, and then I'll take the day off. But most of the time I go to work, just like my dad did. And the third thing that I admire about my dad was that he was always a seeker. And what I mean when I say that is he had this intellectual curiosity. He was never satisfied, like he knew it all, that he had learned enough, that that he was done learning or done growing. My dad continued to read. He did crossword puzzles. He challenged himself mentally, and I think that too set a very good example for me, that not to get complacent and think, oh well, I graduated from high school, that's enough. Whether you go to school or not, whether you go to college or not, you can still be intellectually curious, like why things are the way they are, or how things work. And I don't there's a lot of things I don't understand, but you know what, I'm curious, and sometimes I'll take the initiative, and I will go find out, go explore that, and see what why is that the way it is, or how does that work. Not with everything. There are some things I have no interest in learning about, but I admire people. Like, I admire people who are mechanical, people who work on things, take engines apart and put them back together and actually have them work again. I don't have that kind of confidence in myself, so I don't do that kind of stuff. But I am curious about the world around me in bigger ways, or different ways, and I try to always learn something. Try to learn something new every day. That's been my goal since I was probably in my late teens, was try to learn something new every day. It's easier when you're younger. As you get older, it seems like it's harder to do, but be curious about the world around you. And my dad was a real believer in reading, and still is to this day. He's always got a book on the nightstand, or on the end table, or on the coffee table that he's reading. And I admire that about my dad. He's still seeking, still trying to understand things. And so those are 3 reasons why I admire my dad. One more. My dad, throughout his life, he has taken risks as well. He didn't just I grew up in a small Midwestern town, and my dad he felt like we were kind of stagnant, or he was stagnant. Thus, I guess we were stagnant. So he, when I was 17 years old, he decided to move to Southern California and basically start over, which we all did. And that was a risk. I mean, that was leaving everybody behind, and leaving what was familiar and what you knew, and heading off to someplace unknown, at least unknown to us. That was a pretty big risk, and I always admired my dad for that, because as a benefit of that, I haven't been afraid to take that risk myself. Like when I then left California and moved up here to northeastern Nevada for a job opportunity. Well, I had done it once before. Granted, last time I had my family with me. This time I did it alone. But it was a good thing, and it's turned out to be a good thing. And I might not have done that if my father hadn't modeled a little bit of that risk taking. So So there's my who do I admire? The person I admire the most and why. And one more recap, that's my dad, because he doesn't take my crap. He is he's been a hard worker all his life. He is intellectually curious, and he hasn't been afraid to take risks. So that's it for that video. This has been JP1970. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave any comments in the comment section down below. And until next time, take care, everybody. I'll see you in the next one.